Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The End Credits, the podcast where two brothers discuss their thoughts on a film of their choosing. I'm Dominic,
I'm Jonathan.
and today we are talking about Jackie Chan's Hong Kong action/crime film, Police Story.
So originally when we are going to do this episode, we were like at a loss on like which direction we're going towards. And I remember just going to the library and just taking a look on like what was happening, I guess. And we had like thoughts on like doing like international films.
Right.
And so I just looked at that section during the library and my eye came across Police Story, specifically the Criterion Collection version of it. I was like, oh, this looks good. And it's Jackie Chan, so I had like some recognizability towards it. And I was like, oh, Police Story, I've heard of it, and seen some good things. It's in this collection. I was like, oh man, no brainer to do it for a podcast episode. And when we watched it, it was like, okay, yes, it was correct to do it for an episode.
Yeah, I was going to say that I had seen like several scenes from the film already before prior to watching it. So like its reputation already preceded itself because I already knew a lot of the iconic scenes from this movie and the music. So I was like pretty excited that and kind of confused as to why I haven't actually watched the film already, because I've seen all these scenes and I actually haven't sat down and watched the film yet. So yeah, and you're right, it was definitely delivered, and it was even more than I expected. But I already knew it was going to be pretty good, especially with what I've already seen.
Yeah, I don't think I knew pretty much anything of the film besides like the most iconic stunt, which we'll get to at the end. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't think I knew like anything like the premise or any of this, or maybe the soundtrack, maybe. But like, I don't think I knew too much going in. I just heard of it. It's Jackie Chan, as part of the Criterion Collection. I was like, it had to be good somewhat, right?
Yeah.
The Hong Kong action/crime film Police Story was directed by Jackie Chan with a release date of December 14th, 1985. Had a runtime of 100 minutes and it stars Jackie Chan, Bridget Lin, and Maggie Chun. A virtuous Hong Kong police officer must clear his good name when the drug lord he is after frames him for the murder of a dirty cop.
I think I know what I really liked about this film, and honestly, I think it was just because the story is such a simple one.
I was going to say that too. The story is just like I guess what you generically think of when it comes to an action film, like, okay, here's this drug lord we have to go after, and we have our police officer, have to going through, the city to get him or whatnot. Yeah. So yeah, I would say that as like the most bare bone, simple
police story,
right? But it works. Like it's like the foundational piece, you could say, especially like in 1985 with as like. Because I looked into this, right? And apparently it was like a response to like a previous film that he did.
I saw that too.
The Protector. Uh-huh. And that was released in 85 as well, like in the summertime. And so the fact that he was able to pull off this film right after it, I was like, man, because apparently like in The Protector, he had disagreements with the director on like the fighting, like how to...
Like the style?
Yeah, how to direct it and everything. And... apparently it led him to do his own film where he have full control of everything. And man, like imagine those time constraints though, to release it the same exact year. Sure, this was like late in the year, but like that's not a long time to do a full film, and as good as this one is.
Keep in mind, I believe I saw that the production started for that The Protector. I believe it started in 1983. So they still had some time. So it was just being released in the summer. So he still had a chance to actually do his own film.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did hear that it was supposed to be like his introduction into the American cinema, and apparently, like it went poorly. Unfortunately, supposedly, I've never seen that film. I'm interested in seeing it now. It actually has a similar story too, but I think he pulled something great with Police Story.
Yeah, it's like there's like this combination of comedy and action
Yeah.
through this like crime investigation of who's the drug lord and whatnot, and it actually like meshes well together. It has this like slapstick comedy
Yeah.
with like this high intense, really well directed action,
Yes.
and it's like, oh, it's an amazing art piece, I guess, and it's totally worthy of like being restored and seen for like ages to come.
Exactly. I think, yeah, as you watch it, you're like constantly, like thinking to yourself, especially like with the stunt work and everything. You're just thinking like how they did like how they even pulled off such a thing. But in terms of like the story and whatnot, and how you said that we have like a nice like mix and balance of like the action and the comedy, I thought it was really nice. I think in some ways maybe the comedy came in a little too much, and pacing wise it felt a little strange, but I think that the action definitely made up for it. But I think like if anything like about this film, like as much as I loved it, and I think I would give it like a straight 10 out of 10. I think the comedy, I'm interested to see like where it goes from here, and see if like the comedy does get regressed a little bit. But Police Story was still like a nice like blend of the two.
I think the comedy was actually pretty well paced throughout this movie. There was like not too many like bits that could be like said. I don't think it was like a bad thing, into it. I think it was well paced at the points it needed to be happen. There could be like said like that some stuff hasn't aged well, but I think that's just a product of like older films.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, other than that, I think going to like the storytelling aspect, I think there was like specific bits where if you paid attention enough, later on it paid off to be aware of those things, especially like combining it with like the comedic slapstick style is very much they gave the audience the awareness beforehand, and then had our characters catch up and know what was happening after, and it gave you as the audience like some sort of like
satisfaction,
like also like intensity feeling, like, oh no, like this is about to happen, and it's like, oh no, like if you put the pieces together you're like way ahead of the action, and it's actually kind of cool to see that, because it I don't think it was like confusing in that sense. Maybe in like particular places or like motivations immediately, maybe you got confused. You could get confused there.
Right, I would agree.
But like for the most part, I think that like the comedy aspect and the action was solid there, so you keep up and understand where we're going.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was like a good blend, and it came in its own like ways. I would say that like with the storytelling, I think the one piece, and like you kind of mentioned it briefly, was the fact that I think it kind of got a little confusing with certain characters and motivations, but I think it would just be in terms of like how things are shot and understanding who is who. I think that was a little confusing. Even as much as you paid attention to the film, it was a little confusing, and I think it's just a result of it's a little fast, and you kind of lose certain characters within certain shots because you're like, oh, who is this person and who is this? But the great thing about it is, since the film is such a simple story, it's not too hard to come back and understand where you are. You just have to catch up a little bit sometimes. Because I remember even as we were watching, we were kind of talking to each other like, oh, who is this character and what are their motivations? How are they in relation to the villain, Chu, or our hero, Kakui? So we were like just talking like throughout the film, and I felt like, even as much as you pay attention, you might miss a little details here and there, which I think might be maybe like the only fault of this film, just like a little bit, it's not terrible because, like I said, you can always catch up, and it's not too complex of a story where they give you all these like unnecessary layers because it doesn't do that. So it's easy to come back from.
I just think it's like a directing style difference, I guess.
Sure.
And like the fact where certain some side characters weren't really given the, I guess,
Background.
background or like high introduction, so like we could know everything about them in that section, because some side characters just weren't that important, so they just gave them like a brief, you could fill in the gaps moments, like especially with Snake Eyes. He was a friend of Kakui's, and he basically was giving him locations, to help that, and that sort of relationship wasn't really explored in this film. It was like, okay, this cop has a buddy, and that's just perfectly normal, right? And so you had to fill in those type of gaps. But I can understand though, like if it could be a little bit fast, like, oh, who's this guy, and what are we doing with this, and oh, who's this other person, and oh, I don't remember. I understand that, like that could be lost in the shuffle at some points. But like you said though, because of the simplicity, it could, or you could, go back to where we're going. And again, like I also said that even if you really did pay attention to, you also did get paid off. I'm like, oh yeah, that was this person over here at that point, and it rewarded you for that.
I would say that even not only in just like within the characters, but it's also within the shots for those action sequences. I felt like sometimes we got lost in the action, more or less, of where we are. And I think it's just a matter of just like, I think that my eye was just guided towards different things, so I got lost in the mix, especially like in that opening sequence where they're like taking out the or like they have to ambush that small little town and drive through it and everything. I felt like I got kind of lost in that. Like for just one particular example, like I kind of lost who was who and who I'm seeing now in certain particular moments.
Couldn't you say that's like on purpose though, to like possibly give you this sort of like chaos moment where they're like scrambling to find who's who and don't know which direction they're going? I do understand though, like there's just a lot of explosions and some of the cars are like similar, right?
Right.
So you could look, where's this person going? But I guess that's like, you could say that's like sort of the idea though. We're supposed to get lost in this overflowing, chaos.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about it like that. I think there were certain moments where I was like telling myself, I'm surprised we haven't got a close up here yet. Like with just like who's driving right now and who's inside the vehicle. And maybe that was the intention that, like you said, we were supposed to feel the chaos. And we certainly did in that scene.
Yeah, I would say though, like, they would have those like, breather moments, like I guess in that sort of scenario where we didn't understand the scenario, but then right after we're pulled back to like, okay, here's the goal and we're catching up to wherever, and then you could say also that the comedic moments were those breather moments that you could get from the chaotic moments. I guess also like we're going back to like confusing bits, like some locations could have been like a little bit more confusing, right? So like I want to say with Chu, we were given like several offices, where he was supposed to go, and eventually like we're meant to think that his main office is in the shopping mall. And I guess like at first I was like, wait, where are we? Because it was a little difficult to like understand that.
It felt a little disjointed.
Right. That this was his like headquarters place, because maybe just we don't see a lot of offices in malls. We only see, the shopping centers,
Yeah.
I don't know. But going into like the action sequence, when they really do like some sort of like moves and stunts, is like, oh man, imagine the work that they had to do these things, especially with like at the beginning area. There's Jackie has to like go on this bus, and it's like, oh man, I can't believe he would do such a thing. That's so dangerous.
That is definitely one of the coolest stunts, and that's one of the stunts that I've seen prior to even watching the film. And yeah, I don't know, like it's so iconic, and you're watching it like take place, and you're trying to understand like how would anyone want to do something like that. And what was interesting that I learned that apparently he used a metal umbrella because a wooden one he would slip and slide.
Okay, yeah.
So he needed to use a metal one in order to hang on because a wooden one was slipping all the time, he said.
I wonder if he ever fell. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I assume so. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Man. I don't know.
I definitely want to stress that, you know, I remember growing up thinking and hearing people say how Jackie Chan was probably one of the best actors slash stuntmen of like all time. And then like, you know, his accolades are like unmatched and his stunts are unmatched. And he's one of the big names that come up when we hear the topic of stunts. And I always like knew like Jackie Chan and everything, especially like from like our dad and everything and friends. And it is definitely true. Like, and it is crazy that this film is probably like the staple for like his biggest stunts, his biggest stunt work. And I'm like, this film definitely explores it like in every way, I think. And it's unreal. It's really unreal. Like you watch this and you're thinking, how do they pull this off? And you're just impressed with every single stunt, like big or small. And you're just like, wow, you're right. Jackie Chan is the king of stunts. I mean, it's truly unmatched. I have no words.
I want to say is like Jackie Chan's like Charlie Chaplin in the fact that like they just excel at their work and they can just do whatever. You know, he directed, wrote, and starred in this thing. It's like how many people can actually pull that off?
Right.
You know, and being this, you know, have this whole stunt team, you know, and how to like actually fight properly. It's like, man, how do you learn and find the time to do all this sorts of stuff, all these moving parts, and even, you know, be the star of this film at the exact same time? It's like, man, that's a crazy thing to do.
What a talented human being.
Yeah.
He like not only did he do all those things, but he also even he sang the theme song.
Oh shoot, really? Oh my god.
Yeah, he's the one who sings the theme.
So he is Charlie Chaplin. He can do music too. Man, it's like
it's nuts.
Oh man, it's like how did this guy not be like the biggest thing in Hollywood? You know, it's like he had to do several different, you know, movies in order to break out. I was like, man, this first one should have, you know, easily did it. It's like, man, it's crazy. He's
multi-talented. I mean,
he should get more credit, I feel like.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That like I've always heard that you know, he's a very talented actor. He's very talented in his stunts, and man, I mean, it does make me sad that it's like this is the first time I've seen other Jackie Chan films, and even some of his like earlier work, but it's just surprising to me that I just never saw Police Story, and it's one of his best.
Oh yeah,
and I definitely everyone has to watch this. I think, especially to know like why people consider Jackie one of the top in relation to his stunts. I mean, just watch this film and you'll understand.
Right. Especially like the fact when, you know, they show these reels at the end showing, you know, how they piece together different things, right? And it's like, oh man, it's crazy how much work goes into it and how much they have to put their bodies, you know, through, and like just teaching everybody and working together. It's like, it's a crazy thing that they're able to achieve. And like, even like the fact that they have to like get up after certain stuff, you know, it's like, oh man, how, you know? It's
a huge undertaking, and it's really great to be able to watch those outtakes to see how it was done. And oh man, it is really interesting to see how they actually go about their work, and you gain a massive amount of respect for those people and their craft, because it's a lot of fun watching, but it's a whole nother game when you're actually doing it. And wow, just absolutely incredible. Jackie Chan was pulling off so many crazy things, and directed, starred, and all those things.
I want to say like there was even like really good character work within the story of Police Story.
Yeah,
you know, with Jackie being this like I guess like a young cop, thinking like he wants to do justice, but sometimes the law doesn't allow, justice to happen, I guess. And even like the bad guy Chew is like, man, he doesn't really do a whole lot of action scenes, right? But like he pulls this bad guy, drug lord boss really well. I feel as if like, man, it's like this guy, he's one of those like obviously bosses where has the millions to pay off people, be this corrupt guy, right?
Yeah.
And it just this guy pulls it off well. It's like man, it's like when at the moments when like they have this court case and eventually he gets away free, right? I'm like, yeah, this guy can get away free. Yeah, I like this guy. I was like, I'm pulling for him now. Just it was just a hilarious moment that's like. In real life, sure, like no, don't do this, right? But
sure.
It just in the moment, it was just such a cool maneuver to like, especially because when we were watching it, you were able to see what was going to occur. It was clear as day what sort of loopholes are going to go through, and
right.
I was just like, oh man, I was along for the ride just to see where they're going for.
I know, and that's why it makes it like so entertaining. And I think they chose the right people. Like they chose the right people to be like in those roles, but. It's really great that we're getting that sense of, as an audience, we're getting those we're getting like the message and the ideas, and understanding it a little bit before the characters do. And like you mentioned earlier, like we catch up to it, but we already know what's happening. We're in on the joke, and that's what works really well, especially in this film with the slapstick comedy. That it hits you in a certain way, then it makes you just feel good about the whole situation. Even in the more like serious ones. Where where Chew is going to be, he's going to go off scot-free. So
I want to say even another moment because we were like confused, like at the beginning moments when Kakui has to like guard the secretary, Selena, right? And we had no clue because eventually this kidnapper comes to like take her or whatnot, right? And we're like, where is Kakui at? And
right,
how is he going to save the day,
right,
or whatnot? And we were so confused why this kidnapper was just so bad, I guess, right?
Yeah.
It's like, is this for like comedic effect or something? But then it's like revealed later that oh no, he was with Jackie, and this is like their whole charade to get her on their side, and it's like. All that whole sort of comedy bits that they did, and even like moments when he gets knocked out, the kidnapper, and like they're just using object after object, just like, man, it's like it's funny too.
It's
like
funny,
you understand certain things, and even though you could be confused at certain moments, you're eventually like given the answers to why this moment didn't fit in your head.
Yes, and that's what I was saying earlier about like sometimes we do have to catch up. But it doesn't feel like it's so much work because, again, it's not a crazy multi-layered story, really. It's a simple story that you find in an action film. And what's crazy is that I even read that like a film like this wasn't even commonplace, especially in Hong Kong at the time.
Really?
Yeah, this kind of idea of like a police story wasn't a common story. It even goes back to just the title itself, just to something like police story, just being like as vague as that is.
Yeah.
Audience didn't even know what to expect from it. So that was really interesting to learn. And you do kind of like I said, you do get confused a little bit, but you always get a chance to get caught up. And it's never like too confusing. You just have to like just kind of question a little bit, but that's fine in a film.
There's no really like, I guess, loose ends per se to say in this film, everything's really, those moments are paid off in some other moments. Like particularly like when we go back to the opening sequence in the little town or whatnot, we're seeing this cop, go out of his positioning,
right.
And we're left to think, okay, why did he do that? Why would we see this scene or whatnot? But eventually it leads that, oh, this is the dirty cop that eventually, betrays Kakui or whatnot. And it all pieces together why this person's actions were doing stuff beforehand. And
exactly.
It's, again, if you paid attention to those stuff, it was made good by the end, and you understood where certain stuff was happening, I guess. And that's a good thing, I think, in films, and sometimes not a lot of films do that,
Yeah, exactly, because I think they just hand it to you, And sometimes you do need to work a little bit in a film, which is why I was saying that it's completely okay to have to question sometimes, and to sometimes wait for your answer, because sometimes like maybe the answer won't come immediately, but they will come through in some other scene, like you're saying, where you'll receive that answer.
But I think it also has to like make sense though.
Yeah,
To like and also remember to come back to it,
Yeah.
right?
And
Don't
don't
just
take too
create
long.
right. Don't create something and then at no point has it ever, come back to or paid off to the audience. Is like, okay, so they just start to lose trust in the directing style and
Right.
in the film, and that puts off people to like not even think about those things. But in this film, it's like we paid attention to specific details of specific moments,
Yeah.
and it paid off for you to watch those things, and just it gives you this feeling of satisfaction
Right.
while watching.
Yeah, exactly. And even like another thing that like just makes you look at it and you're like, oh man, this is so satisfying. And we touched on it briefly. Just the idea of like how the shots are framed, especially for the action sequences.
Right.
I love how, and I've watched a short like documentary piece on this like years ago, where Jackie Chan was like explaining his directing style and the idea and his philosophy with cuts, and how he's not the biggest fan of them. He'll use them, but he's like he uses them sparingly, and he likes to be able to show like full body shots of the action sequences because it makes it that more real, and he clearly understands about guiding the eye when it comes to the action sequences. Like, but I'm more like like talking about the moments when people are like just fighting each other, and he clearly shows like the full body shots. Everything's timed just right, and we see not a ton of cuts, and it just looks really nice when you see it all pair together. And it doesn't feel like your eye has to switch back and forth between like a camera angle or like the cuts, and you're seeing everything very smoothly. And he even gives you a little time to like recover when he uses those slow motions to like get this really nice impact effect. And I love those. And it was great even. I also noticed that like he would have like those fast choreographed action sequences, and then all of a sudden it would get like the slow motion would come in, but then he would give you time before he would use another one of those. He wouldn't bring them in succession. He would give you time. And what was even better was the fact that we didn't have any music in those action sequences. No like soundtrack or score underneath it, like to be basically like to distract you in some way.
Right.
It was just pure like punches and kicks.
Right. And also with the fact that like with these like certain cuts and motions, like we were still able to like understand positioning, where people were at,
Right.
and where we were going, as we were following anybody who was fighting or whatnot. We clearly understood which direction we were going. Just like you said, he was able to understand where the positioning was supposed to go, and it was clearly again just well documented. It looked like real fights.
Oh yeah.
And not something like, okay, this person clearly is not even fighting or whatnot. These people knew how to fight.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
exactly. And that's why I was like, man, you're watching those scenes and you're like, what a master, like at the understanding where they need to be. And it felt so cohesive. And it's crazy because I even read too that this was like Jackie's fifth like directing not debut, but like his fifth directing shot. I can't remember the word for it. And he still didn't feel comfortable at this point at being a director.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy because he was even talking about that he didn't feel like too comfortable as a director at this point yet. It probably wasn't until like another, I don't know, 4 years, I think. And so that's pretty crazy because as we're watching like these scenes take place, it just feels like so fluid, and you're thinking to yourself, you're not even thinking that, oh yeah, this is just like on some like behind some green screen, or like we're seeing all these cuts and none of this is real. all the impacts and everything, especially when we hear like the glass shattering
Yeah.
and all of that, you just look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, like that looked like it hurts.
Sometimes it's too real,
Too
you know,
real.
especially like thinking back in the shopping mall sequence when Jackie like gets hit in the head and smashes right into the glass, and like, oh man,
Yeah.
man, I loved just a moment like the attention to detail when they cut to another action part right along with him.
Yeah.
Like he's clearly holding his head like if he was like dazed. It's like, man, that's like, it's just the little things right there. It's like it
Exactly.
clearly sells the whole experience, and like, oh man, it's such a
It's masterpiece.
yeah,
in that
it's a
way.
masterpiece. Nothing can compare. Nothing
Yeah,
can compare.
because like you would see like in a maybe like a newer film now that you wouldn't even see that moment of, oh man, I just got hit in the head. Now I got to like hold it for a couple of minutes because it hurts. You know, you got to bring those little bits of realism into it. And Jackie clearly does that. It just like, it's so stylized, but it's not to the point where it's ridiculous. You know, it's not ridiculous. You
Right.
watch it and you're like, this is real. You don't even think for a moment this is like too over the top or too ridiculous. Crazy is probably what you're thinking
Yeah.
throughout the
Yeah.
entire time. Crazy. That's really it.
Yeah, it's just clear leagues ahead of his time, I think.
Yeah.
Man. I guess we should also just talk about like the most famous scene in the entire movie probably is the shopping mall
Yeah.
hole all the way to the bottom, because Kakui is trying to get to the bottom to like prevent Chu to get the whole documents from running away, because these are the documents that I guess tell that he's this drug lord, all the evidence, right?
Right.
To convict him.
Right.
And man, this is crazy because you know what's about to happen because you've probably seen the scene before, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like once he goes down, this thing plays 3 times just because it's like it's such a crazy shot to see this happening, and like all this stuff's going off, and like he clearly had to got injured from this. And if you watch any backstage stuff, obviously he did, right?
did.
But like. I don't know how many times they had to do it, but the mere fact that he gets injured, but in the film you see him legit take this and get right back up into the action. It's like,
Yeah.
this is a crazy man right here. This
Right.
this is God, It's
Yeah.
like clearly.
Oh man. Again, this is why I was saying that this guy, Jackie Chan, is the master of stunt work. Like, you could say all you want about other people who do all these other things. They're unmatched, Jackie Chan. I just got to say that. This stunt was crazy. It was insane. And him sliding down that pole with all those lights like going off and, oh my gosh, and then breaking through, like crashing through that glass roof and then just getting right back up. Clearly, that was a different take.
Yeah, it had to be.
Because he was probably lying there for a while after that stunt. But I even read too that what was worse about it was the fact that the pool that he slid down from was being heated up by all those lights. So he heated up that pool considerably. So he suffered 2nd-degree burns on his hands as he slid down that pool. Man. And I was like, wow, not only did he have to suffer those 2nd-degree burns, I believe he also dislocated his pelvis. Yeah, probably like all the cuts and bruises.
I also
my
heard
gosh.
that they were also stressed on time
Right.
due to being in the malls, because apparently this mall had to get back into production the next morning, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, no normal human being wants to go through this stunt. There's got to be a little bit of fear, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have to go do this, and I'm on a time constraint, and like, oh man, I just gotta hope to God, I'm all right, and having just propel himself to do this jump, and man, gotta give him props for this. It's like, geez, this thing immediately alone sells the movie, I think.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. Like that scene alone is worth watching.
Yeah.
It's worth watching this movie for that scene.
The rest is really great too,
It is.
obviously.
It
But
is.
like, man, it's like this is why obviously the whole scene is regarded as, one of the high action stunts that he's ever done, probably.
Yeah, like the best. I mean, oh geez, unreal. Yeah, just so good. Like overall, this film is it was definitely a real treat to watch, and I can't believe it's taken this long for me to watch it.
Yeah, man. We were actually like, we were delayed in actually watching this because we were like, okay, we're going to watch it this night. But they're like, nah, we're not really feeling it. And then we watched it the next day. And I was like, man, we should have watched it the original night. You know, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
You know, I was like, oh man, this is crazy. It's like, it's definitely like went into like one of the top films I want to say of mine. And like,
Oh, yeah.
I definitely, like, we've said this before on the podcast, like, oh, we definitely got to buy this, but legit, this one we got to buy immediately.
Yeah.
This is just too good. This is too good stuff. Like, man.
Yeah, this is definitely like this is definitely a movie to own. It's not one that you can't pass this one up. You really can. And I'm really interested because we're going to take a look at Police Story 2 in the future, and I really do I'm curious, like, to see how they go about this one, and if they regress a little bit into the slapstick comedy. Does it become a little bit more action-like? Do the stunts grow even greater? Do they get a little bit smarter about the stunt work?
Maybe it falls flat because, you know, you hear about sequels, you know, never as good as the original. So
Right.
Who knows?
Right. I have high hopes for Police Story 2.
I do too. Yeah.
Let's see how it is. But yeah, Police Story 1. Good storytelling, really nice use of comedy to, you know, give yourself some like downtime for the action bits. Because as I've said before too, I'm like a firm believer, like with any kind of like action film, you need to have your downtime. Or in any kind of film, you need to have some downtime because we can't keep the audience in suspense. We can't keep them in the action sequence forever. So downtime is required in these kind of films. And the slapstick comedy works and pairs with it pretty well. Music's great. Like the stunt work is like, we don't even have to talk about that. It's just so good.
Right.
Like it speaks for itself.
It's refreshing to see something so good. You know, I was like,
Yeah.
man, this is everything about it's like crystal clear, attention to detail. You know, this person definitely, you know, Jackie Chan gave his heart out. I think it's like,
Oh
man.
yeah. And I think that it's like it kind of like leaves this impression on you that you're like, oh man, you kind of want to make something like that. You want to be able to see films that really have that kind of passion, because you could tell that there was passion for this kind of movie.
Definitely.
In order like to make it as much as like probably like on the little time that they had to make the film, and you know the crew that they had in order to make it, the ideas they had, like it's one of those things that you're like, man, that's a beautiful film. That's really good.
Yeah, definitely.
And you definitely understand like, oh, this is definitely something that's it has to. It is definitely going to like withstand the test of time, and everyone has to see this. Everyone has to. Maybe you already know like Jackie's like newer films and whatnot. And is more like Hollywood era like films, but man, definitely check out his older stuff, because yeah, this is him at his peak and his prime.
This is good. Police Story is a must watch.
Yeah, and there we have it, Jackie Chan's Hong Kong action/crime film, Police Story. We hoped you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The End Credits. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The End Credits Podcast, and over on Twitter at The End Credits. If you're watching the video version, make sure to subscribe to the End Credits YouTube channel. That's it. Thank you and goodbye.